When trying to think of a online environment where criterion referenced instruction is shown, I immediately thought of my accounting course that I currently teach. This is a hybrid type course currently, and so I do see my students face to face sometimes during the week, but a majority, I would say 80% of what they do is in an online learning environment. My school utilizes Schoology in order to have students access videos, files, information, anything that they would need. That's where our discussions and our forums take place. And so that is where I would post a video like this to tell them their objectives. This is also something that can be done face to face, but for every chapter in accounting, I start with the main theme. So as you can see here, this would be a PowerPoint saying that in chapter 3 we are going to journalize transactions. In accounting, everything is built upon one another, so the mastery of the objectives is critical to the student's success. So for the criterion reference instructions, the CRI, the goal and task analysis and the performance objective is something that I relate to in every single chapter. So my students would see something similar to this as they are interacting with it, whether it be, like I said, me face to face giving these objectives, or whether they're watching a video that's embedded into Schoology. But you can see here that the students know exactly what the objectives are for chapter 3. There's about roughly four sections in chapter 3, so students are able to identify all of these 6 objectives by the end of the 4 sections. So as I break this out in the modules, students know that, okay, in section 1, we are going to be able to complete objective 1 and 2. Maybe we get to objective number 3 in section 2. I relate back to these periodically throughout the entire chapter to say, all right, now you guys will be able to record transactions to buy insurance for cash and supplies on account in a 5-column journal. So students know exactly what they have to know, what they are able to do when they get evaluated at the end of the section. So this is kind of the goal and task analysis and the performance objectives. These are the outcomes we hope for them to have accomplished and what they're going to have to be evaluated on. So I'm not going to show you in detail, but for each section, at the beginning of each section where I record the video, I go back to one of these 6 or maybe 2 of these 6 objectives so that students know exactly in this section you will be able to do this. This is what we are learning. After students interact with the instruction based and the objectives, they are then working on their working papers on Applia. And so this is the site in which I use. This would be how the student sees it. My instructor view is a little bit different. But as you can see, there are all their chapter 3 assignments. So it starts with what's called a work together and on your own. What is really cool about the work together and on your own is if I click in here, students are able to see what they are doing correctly and what they are doing incorrectly. So feedback from an instructor, if I were having to do this with pen and paper, would be hours and hours of grading every night, and then students wouldn't be able to see it until maybe the next day or the day after that. So they're not quite sure if they are doing it correctly. With Applia, with this site, students are able to see exactly what they're doing correctly and incorrectly. So what they do is they also have a book for this course, so the same instructions and objectives are found in the book, but a lot of the students use just the instructions right into the site. So here's their work together problem you can see for 3-1. So this is section 1. Here is their objective. They're journalizing entries into a 5-column journal, which that relates back to one of the objectives, and then it talks about the transactions. So as you can see, these work together and on your own assignments, they're not lengthy, but what they're going to do is they're building that knowledge so that students, when they get to the mastery, they really feel comfortable with the program. What they can do next is they can go to check answer, and then obviously there's nothing done. You can see that these will turn green as soon as the student is doing it correctly. So there's that immediate feedback that students can see as they are working through the problem. So maybe they're doing this at midnight and I'm not available for instruction. They can see what they're doing correctly and incorrectly. A lot of students at the beginning, they would kind of just automatically look at the explanation, but as they get going, they really do utilize it as a feedback tool. If they can also open up the explanation, and the explanation kind of gives them more of a detailed explanation of what the correct answer is. So what I really enjoy about this is going back kind of to CRI. They can have repeated practice. They can sequence their own instructions, so they can go at whatever pace they have. If I go back to their home screen, you can see that I don't make the assignments due every single day. They have roughly a week or two to work through these at their own pace. So I get a printout and I get feedback as to where students are at. I can see exactly where students are struggling, what students are just whizzing through the information, and so then I can monitor that instruction, really differentiate it between each student. They then work on an application problem, which the application problem doesn't necessarily tell them that they're doing it right or wrong immediately, but after this due date has passed, then they can go back and see what they've done correctly. And then for each section, they do a work together and an on your own. The work together I like to post online so that they can I can explain and kind of go through that example. The on their own they typically do in learning groups. Application they do independently, and then the mastery is putting everything together. So mastery is where that's going to be a lot of points. That's going to be putting sections 1 through 4 all together in one assignment, so that it can really I can really evaluate their learning in terms of the entire chapter. So if I click here, you can see that it's a lot more lengthy, but it has all of those objectives inside of it. In their book as well, it says, what the mastery is kind of hitting on, what are those main objectives. So when I develop the learning module, it's really nice because we can go from, here's our objectives for the entire chapter, and then here is what we're going to learn in each section and how they relate to the larger chapter, and then break it apart in each section to work together on your own application and then mastery. There's also a challenge problem that you see here. This is to get those students. A lot of times, this is there's kind of a weird situation or a transaction that happens that's kind of out of the norm that students really have to challenge themselves with. So this is a great tool to use for those students who are really grasping the concepts and kind of going through the material quickly, and that's something that I challenge certain students with if they're really understanding the material. And then lastly, there's an online test. It can be given online, and that is exactly evaluation of the objectives that you saw in the PowerPoint that are here 1 through 6. So using CRI really makes sense to me because it really gives the students that task analysis and what their objectives are, so they know why they're learning what they're learning. And another thing that I do inside of accounting that is really terrific is that it relates to a bigger picture. So we actually have in our Schoology site, we have here's how it relates into the accounting equation and the accounting concept throughout all of the chapters we learn in the entire semester. So it really builds upon one another, so it allows students to connect those pieces, and it allows them to also have to interact at their own pace. They really get to do it whether they're doing it at midnight, during class, or at another time of the day. It really allows them to use that online environment at their own pace, which I really appreciate as a teacher. And that allows me to give them feedback because I can automatically see their scores, and then it allows them to understand where they're at and what sections they're really understanding and what sections they might need more practice on. So that's just a little overview of the criterion referenced instruction model for our TIP project that you can see is very applicable in a course like accounting and with Applia, the site that I use for the online working papers.